Hello there. In this lesson we're going to show you how you can create a personalised earring. In this case we're just going to use the lowercase letter A, and we're going to use a 3D Harrington font. But the principles are the same for any character that you use, any font that you use. So if you start up Fluid Designer, the opening screen should look something like this. Now we're going to use the Harrington fonts. So if you go to Patterns, Alphabet, Harrington font, and we're going to use the lowercase letter A. So we just highlight letter A and just drag and drop it onto the workspace. Now our workspace is made up of the browser window, so you can see there are other letters here that we could have dragged and dropped onto the workspace. The outliner window here, and I'm just scrolling the center mouse button to scroll up and down. Now all these objects that are listed here are not in view. This switches the objects on, but as you can see when I switch them on, they're just rectangles and squares. Well, these are the objects that wrap around the letter A. To tilt it like that, I just hold down the center mouse button, and just rock the letter, and you can see the thickness. Well, these are all the cross-sectional thicknesses of this object. The object itself is right down at the bottom here, Harrington font, and this little curve here tells me that it is in fact a curve, this object, rather than a mesh. So the I means it's in view, and as you can see I can switch the view on and off, and the little arrow here allows you to select it or not select it, but we want to be able to use it. So with this object highlighted, and you know that it's highlighted because you can see the colour change there, so that's that object highlighted. Here's the Harrington font highlighted, and you can see that we get the X, the Y, the green one, and the blue, the red arrow here. These are the three axes in our 3 dimensions. And again, I'm just holding down the center mouse button and just rotating and rocking the mouse gently. So if we look at our object here, letter A, well, we can see the size of it, 9, so 10 millimeters, 11 millimeters, and then 2 millimeters. Z is the actual thickness of this object. Z is the blue arrow direction, so this is the thickness of the object. If we click on this option over here, set the curve data information, and if I just open up this window slightly, the so-called bevel object, this represents the cross section of our letter A. So the cross section is 1 millimeter by 2 millimeters. So what that means is that this thickness here is 1 millimeter, this depth is 2 millimeters, and 1 millimeter by 2 millimeters is in fact this object here, this curve, that shape there. That's the cross-sectional shape that is wrapped around the letter A. Now you don't need to switch these cross sections on, you can keep them switched off, but it is important that Harrington font A is switched on in view. So if we wanted to change the thickness of our letter A, we could just click here and we could check a thickness of 3 millimeters instead of 1 millimeter, and you can see that automatically changes the thickness of our letter A. Now what you've got to take into account, if you're going to make an earring out of this, the thicker you make it, the more material is, the heavier the object becomes. So I'm going to return it to a thickness level of 2 millimeters. That keeps our object nice and light. Okay, so that's how we could change the thickness of this object. And I'm just zooming in and out here by again scrolling the center mouse button. So in order to use this as an earring, we need some sort of connector at the top here. Now if I just go up to the top of the browser window here and click on where it says Patterns, 3D Templates Connectors, if I just click on that one for the moment, and then I'm just scrolling the center mouse button here, and you can see there are different sorts of connectors I can use. And the one that I want to use for an earring is this one here, this wire connector with a 2.0mm diameter hole. Now if I drag and drop this onto the workspace, my letter A will disappear. What I want to do is have this object on the workspace with the letter A. And the way to do that in Fluid Designer is to use a command called append. Append means to take an object that's already been created, like this wire connector, and add it to the existing workspace. And we do that by going to File and Append. Now at the moment we're in the Harrington font folder. Patterns Alphabet Harrington font. That's the folder that we're in at the moment. What we want to do is to go up the folder system. So this is the default groups folder for Fluid Designer, and all these folders here will appear up at the top of the browser panel when we're in viewing mode for the actual object. We want this folder here, 3D templates connector, so I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to use the object that I've just shown you, which is the wire connector. Sorry, let me just point at that again. The wire connector with a 2mm diameter hole. So I'm going to select that that particular file, and what I want to do is I want the object that's in there, which is the wire connector with a 2mm diameter hole, and I'm going to append that from the library. This is a file that already exists, and I want to add that wire connector to my existing workspace with the Harrington font. So there's the Harrington font selected, there's the wire connector selected. It is important to select it before you try and do anything. Just appending it is not enough. Look for the yellow outline of the object. That's when it's actually selected. Now what I want to do now is to move that object up slightly, and I want to put it at the top of the letter A. Now as you can see, it's not in the right direction at the moment, so I want to rotate this object around. So I want to rotate it from 12 o'clock down to 6 o'clock. In other words, I want to rotate it 180 degrees. Now there's three possible axes that I could rotate it about: the x-axis, the y-axis, or the z-axis. Okay, well what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it about the x-axis, and the way to do that in Fluid Designer is R for rotate, and I'm going to press the letter X on the keyboard to limit the rotation to the x-axis, and then I'm going to type 180 degrees. So that's rotate, x-axis 180 degrees. I'll just do Control Z and undo that, put it back at the top again. Let me just go to view and view the thing from the top. I'm just going to switch on the screencast keys here. So down here you should be able to see the keys that I'm pressing. So here we are. We want to rotate it about the x-axis, so it's R on the keyboard. R on the keyboard. X to limit the rotation to the x-axis. And you see the red light comes up, so you can see it's only rotating about the x-axis now. And then I type 180 to give me 180 degrees. Now you may have to position this. So I'm just going to do it like that, dragging it up and down and just scrolling in with the center mouse button. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit mode, because at the moment this object is sticking quite a long way into my letter A, so I'm going to press the tab key on the keyboard, and you can see these control points here, quite a lot of them inside the object, and I'm going to delete some of those. So I'm going to highlight the one at the bottom, and to delete in Fluid Designer we press the X key on the keyboard, and I'm going to delete that vertices, delete that point. So I'm going to highlight another point there, press X on the keyboard and delete that point, and I'm just scrolling in, so you can see that point there is the end now of my connector. Excuse me. And as you can see, when I rock the rock the object there, it's pretty much in the center of this part of the letter A, and that's what I want. I don't want any holes at the top. I don't want it sticking out of the bottom or sticking through into the inside of here. That's the position that I want it in. So I can now come out of edit mode, and I do that by pressing the tab key on the keyboard. So we've got the letter A and we've got our connector. What we want to do now is to join these two objects together, and the way that we do that is we highlight both of them using the shift key. Now if I select the letter A first and hold down the shift key on the keyboard and then select the connector, if I go to Tools, Object Tools and join the two together, because I selected the connector last, the shape of this will take on the round shape of the connector. So let me just do that. So you can see the letter A has changed to be the same shape as the connector. Now I don't want that. I want the connector to be the same shape as the letter A. So I'm going to undo that by holding down the Control key and pressing Z. Hold down the Control key a second time and press Z. So that undoes the action that I've just done. So what I need to do is I want to select the connector first, and the last object that I select is the one which I want to keep the shape of. So I hold down the shift key and select the letter A. So I held the connector first and the letter A second, and if I now go to Tools, Object Tools and Join, the connector will take on the same shape, the same cross section, the 2 millimeters deep cross section, and that the letter A is. And if I actually change the bevel object here to 3 millimeters, notice that the connector thickness changes as well, because the objects are now joined as one. And that's what I want. So there's my Harrington font letter A earring with a 2 millimeter connector at the top. If I just go to View and view it from the top, if I just scroll in and zoom, we could measure this because there is a ruler on the toolbar. So if I click the ruler there, you should be able to see that there is a 2 millimeter diameter hole there at the top. And I press Escape key to cancel the connector there. So there's my Harrington font letter A, and the cross section of it is 1 millimeter by 2 millimeters. So that's the finished object essentially. Now whenever you use Fluid Designer, we don't recommend you go to File and Save. We always recommend you go to File and you export. And the printable file format that we normally use is Wavefront, a Wavefront object file, Wavefront OBJ file. So we select File, Export and Wavefront. And I like to save objects to the desktop that I intend to print, so I select Desktop here. So it's an Harrington font with a letter A. Now you could click in there and you could type earring, or you could type your name. Whatever you want really, just to give it some personalized label, and then you basically export the object file and the printable file format will be saved to the desktop. There are some other things that need to be done to that object before it can be printed. We usually run it through something called Netfab Basic, but we're not going to do that here. But essentially if you upload that object to Shapeways or some other printing service, you will be able to get this earring printed. And you do need to remember the actual real size of this object. It's only about, well, it was about 11 millimeters tall, I think, plus a few more millimeters here, so it's only about 15 millimeters in size, this object. That's some consideration you need to make. Okay, so that's how you can make your own personalized earring using a 3D Harrington font. Thank you.